Hey guys and gals, this is your host Joe, Life with Josef. Story time today. I rarely talk about my life prior to meeting my dad in 1965 and my new brothers and such, but a picture came across the one of the Sacramento Museum Facebook pages. I'm going to put this in right here. It's a restaurant. It's a food court at the time called Food Circus. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the background here. My mother, in 1960, well, her and Joe made me without really planning for it. And in 1960, when you're 18 years old and pregnant, you marry the father of your child. So my mother married Joe, and I've got a couple of clips. I think I may either have a still or a little clip right here in the background of Joe and my mom at somebody's party. And so Joe's not the nicest guy in town. Finally, my mom realizes, okay, I'm going to divorce this guy. And she divorces him. And her story, I don't doubt this now, she says that somebody called her and said the next time Joe comes to pick up Joey, that's me, is the last time you're going to see him. And she took that absolutely as the gospel. And she literally packed the car and child napped me. Now, I'm 2 or 3, so this is probably 1963. Maybe, yeah, I think it's 1963. So the short story is that she meets a guy that I ended up re-meeting right before my freshman year in their family. I ended up calling him my dad for a long time. I referred to him as dad, and he started referring to me as one of his sons, mainly as adults. And um, he quit calling me, and he wouldn't answer my call. So one day I called again, and well, when his dad died, he didn't call me, and I'm calling my wife. I'm in home delivery. I'm going to go home, and my wife says, "Hey, you need to call your mom. Your grandpa died." I call my mom. I'm saying, "Hey, Mom, how did you find this out?" Well, bluntly, somehow my grandma Ruth saw it in the paper or something like that. And anyway, I call. She saw it in the Sunday obituaries. So I immediately call my dad and I ask him, "What the hell here? You didn't call me? My grandpa died?" And he blew me off, and it really hurt my feelings. Now I understand that when your parent dies, now like with my spouse, my mom said when her mom, my grandma passed, and even my grandpa, she said, life changes for you. So I tried to show the guy grace. I was angry for 2 years, and it was never the same after that. And, he never called me either, so I should have got the hint. And anyway, um, hold on here, I got sidetracked. So we start, Dee and my mom and I are a little family, and we live off and on with Dee's sister. There was a time when we lived in Saugus that the sister was a hairdresser, and she'd go to work, and everybody would go to work, and then Grandma would stay home and lasso me and my cousin, who was also my age, and then the younger son Elle, who was maybe 4 years older than me. So we live with these people, and long story short, Dee and my mom parted ways, and my mom was working in the cash economy because Joe had always said, "I'm going to be able to track you down through your tax returns." Well, if you don't work a W-2 job and you work for cash and you're not paying your taxes, you're going to be harder to be found. And so we lived for a while. We were housekeeping like Alice from the Brady Bunch in in a very rich person in Sacramento's place. I mean, it was like an estate. It was an entire city block. And I remember this because I remember being there, but my mom tells the story of she hears the slider open, she hears me squeal, and then she hears me splash in the swimming pool, and I don't know how to swim. And God love my mother, she jumped in the pool and saved my life. It's one of the 3 times I've been incredibly close to buying the farm. So anyway, we'll get back now. My mother decides, okay, I need to make a completely fresh start. So she leaves me with my grandparents, with these parents, Gino and Margie. And Margie loved me. Oh God, you know, we all have faults, but by God, that woman, my abuela, just loved me. Anyway, my mom went to San Francisco. She was staying at the YWCA, which at the time was a single room occupancy boarding house, for lack of a better word, for single women. And she was seeking employment in the cash economy as a housekeeper. And she answered my dad's ad, and one day I show up with a little suitcase with everything I own on God's earth. The first night I shared the bedroom with my mom like we did when she was housekeeping elsewhere, and then the next day they put me in the bedroom with my 3 new brothers, and there you go. But food circus, when I was with Gino and Margie, I've always stuttered. The stuttering's Tourette's, as it turns out. I don't know if I mentioned that yet or not, but she would say, Mijo, where do you want to go eat? And I, 2 or 3 years old, I'd say, I want to go to food circus. And by God, the picture came up, and I remember this. And years later, after Gino died, Margie was living with the daughter who was the hairdresser, who made a really good living. I always admired and respected Jay for this. She was good people too, but whenever I was passing through Reading, if I didn't have time to see anybody else, including my own grandma, my mom's mom, I would stop out and see Margie out at Jackie's house. Jackie's at work, but one day I'm walking out, probably one of the last times that I saw her coherent. I was out in front and she's on the porch, and I said, Grandma, if it wasn't for you and Gino taking me while my mother made her new life after your son, I wouldn't have anything that I have now. Now you call it the butterfly effect. But I said, everything I and my mother have was started because you took me in, let me live with you for free, and allowed my mother to make a fresh start, which she took advantage of, as I have as well. And she just smiled and just said, of course, Mijo, we love you. What else would we do but step up? So God love you, Margie and Gino. They were just troubled. None of us are perfect, but by God, they treated me wonderfully. Anyway, that's a little bit of the background here. I'm a victim of what you would now say would be partial custodial child napping, and here I am. I didn't see Joe, my birth father, after that. I didn't see him again. It was 2 years after his death that I discovered, well, my mom did. I can't think if I told this or not, but I met back up with the Petersons because when you sign up for a passport, you have to say what happened to your biological parents. Well, my mother went on the internet. This is a while ago. I was still married to the plaintiff. They were going to take us on an Alaska cruise, which they did, and you have to have a passport. Well, for me to get a passport, I had to know what happened to Joe. Well, my mom found out that he passed away up in Coos Bay. So, and then in the obit, I'm not mentioned, but I've got 2 half siblings, so this is okay. So At the time, I paid like $10 to get one of these will look people up deals. And I found the widow, Beverly. I found her address. I found my half-brother Norm's, a number of addresses. And I found my half-sister, Zona, who turned out wasn't interested in meeting me, and that's fine. So I sent a bunch of mailers out. Bev responded. She got back from vacation, saw it, opened it up, looked at the pictures, and my first sentence was, "I'm going to cut to the chase." And she told me later that is exactly like Joe. So um, I did find out now the passport, because when my parents got married at the end of 1967. This was in December. In February, I woke up one day and said, my mom has a new name. I've got a new dad and new brothers. I've been around here for a few years now. I told my mom, I'm changing my name. Now, I don't remember any pressure being put on me. And my mother said the same thing. We didn't pressure you. So I went to school and I said, you need to move me from the P's to the S's. We never went to court. You didn't have to. As long as you're not doing it for fraud, you can change your name whenever you want. Now it's just a whole lot easier to go to court and have it done. So my birth certificate says one last name, and the name that I use now, my legal name, my other legal name is what I use now, but I didn't have a document that stated this. So I had to get 3 or 4, I think 3, but I sent in 4 notarized statements, one from my mom, one from my dad, and then one from Mark and one from George. And it basically says, we knew Joe as Joe's previous name. And they had it notarized, and I sent everything in, and I got my passport. Now, I use my passport when I ID a lot of places. It's just handy. Let me stop and think if there's any other part of this. So to close this up, that's how I made contact with Bev and Norman and Bev's daughter, Teresa, and her husband, Jesus, whose name is escaping me. I'm sorry, bro. I'm having a rough time since my wife passed. But they were all really nice. They accepted me as family. I got to meet my uncle Fargo, who was Joe's full brother. He was living in Texas. We went down through Texas 3 times to see him. And I called him in the hospital the day before he passed, and I just said, Uncle, I owe you an awful lot for this. And my God, Uncle treated my wife like the queen. I think I have a YouTube story time about my uncle. I'll put it in the description. So this is kind of a little bit of background. I saw the food circus a picture, and instead of just posting it, I'll make a 10-minute story. So this is your host, Joe, Life with Josef. A little bit of my background that maybe not all of you know. Even people I've met as adults, like Charlie or my brother Phil, or Paul. I don't think any of them know this. I never really talked about it. I wasn't ashamed of it. It was just, okay. So, yes, I was a victim of child napping. Yes, I changed my name. Yes, I had a little bit of struggle with the passport, but it all worked itself out. In fact, when I got my Oregon DL, I didn't have I just used my passport. And then when I came back to California, I just used my passport. So it's really handy to have, and I suggest all of you obtain one if you ever want to travel. So this is your host, Joe, Life with Josef. Little story time here about some of my background in the food circus. Enjoy your day. Peace be with you, and we'll see you for the next one.